Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. A video I wasn't planning to do today, but I thought I would, because it only seemed right and fitting to celebrate the birthday of the legendary one and only Mr. Tom Baker. He's 90 today. It's Saturday, the 20th of January. Mr. Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor in Doctor Who, is 90, and that's worth celebrating. I've noticed that quite a lot of people have been putting things up on Facebook and on social media. I put a little thing up on Facebook myself today, but I've noticed a few other little videos have gone up on YouTube, so I thought that I'd just do something quite short just to commemorate the life and times of a remarkable actor, a remarkable Doctor. Tom Baker is 90, and it's incredible to think that this man that we saw as this vibrant, wild-eyed, crazy, eccentric hero in the 70s and into the 80s has now reached the milestone age of 90. He's virtually a Time Lord himself. He's indestructible. At least I hope he is. I live in sort of constant dread of that moment when we hear the news that he's no longer with us. But he looks quite hale and hearty. You might have seen some of the recent photographs. He's quite gaunt, obviously. He's quite thin. But, he's 90. That happens when you get older. People do lose a lot of their body mass when they get older. I'm quite looking forward to it myself, actually. But he, by all accounts, he's well. He's still switched on. He's still doing work with Big Finish, playing the Doctor, of course. I don't imagine we'll see him on screen again. But he still seems quite hale and hearty, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new interview with him, which is on the season 15 Blu-ray box set, which is coming out very soon. So Tom Baker, what can you say about Tom Baker in a way? There's so much to say about the man. His importance in the world of Doctor Who can't be understated. Historical context, of course. He came along in 1974 to take over from John Pertwee. Now, John Pertwee, across 5 seasons, had really cemented himself as the Doctor for a new era of Doctor Who, the colour age of Doctor Who, with his sort of swashbuckling James Bond antics, his love of colourful, frilly shirts and colourful jackets. And he recreated Doctor Who as an action hero, which is what he wanted to do. He wanted to do Doctor Who as James Bond. Tom Baker came along in 1974, and it was time for something different. With a new production team on board, went off into different areas. The Doctor was very much an alien, and I think that's something that Tom Baker said over the years. He wanted you to think of the Doctor as somebody who had secrets and knew things, and was thinking things that humans didn't know. And for his first few seasons, he did feel really otherworldly. He could be quite cold and callous and distant. Still the hero, still the righter of wrongs, but a bit more unknowable, perhaps, than certainly his immediate predecessor. That's what made his first 3 or 4 series so compelling, because he genuinely felt like this alien that you had to be very wary of, because you didn't know where he was going to go off next. As I mentioned in my ranking videos a couple of months back, they're still available, incidentally, if you haven't seen them yet. I felt that towards the end of his run, I think that he'd been there for so long. He was there for 7 years. And I think his performance became a little slacker and became a little bit more comedic. And that falls at the feet of the producer, Graham Williams, who took over from Philip Hinchcliffe when the show came under fire from the Mary Whitehouse Brigade, as we've mentioned in the past, who then forced the BBC to tone the series down. It became lighter and more comedic. And Tom Baker settled into the role, and after 3 or 4 years, he played along to that, and he aimed the show much more at children. Of course, K9 came along, and the whole tenor of the show changed. But what didn't change was the power of Tom Baker's performance. The character mellowed, the character became less dark and less of the, I won't say an anti-hero, but he became less of an obviously benevolent alien. And then he became much more of that. He became much more avuncular, much more comedic. Still had the sharp brain, the sharp intellect, but he was a bit more of I think he played up to that image that people often said of him, of the Harpo Marx with the curly hair and this tendency towards slapstick. But his performance never faltered. He was always pitch perfect in terms of delivering his dialogue and just in terms of the presence that he brought to the screen, and that some memorable costumes. And it is, again, something I mentioned in my ranking video. Even now, all these years after he left the role, a sort of a lazy shorthand for Doctor Who amongst comedians and journalists and cultural observers is, the Doctor with his hat and scarf. and jelly babies. That's something which Tom Baker just cemented into the role, and he made such an impact across those 7 years. That's what many people still think of Doctor Who, despite the 21st century reinvention, despite the massive popularity of David Tennant. People still characterise the Doctor as hat and scarf, and I think that tells us how powerful and how important Tom Baker's contribution is. So I just wanted to doff my cap. In fact, I was going to put my scarf on, but I didn't get around to it. I want to doff my cap to the great Tom Baker and wish him all the best for his 90th birthday. Tom will be watching this, of course, but I feel that at least I put my thoughts out there into the universe for Tom's 90th birthday. I have a couple of Tom Baker related anecdotes because I was fortunate enough to meet the guy a couple of times. Can't remember if I've recounted them on this channel before, but if I had, I'm going to do it again. And before I do, I'm going to put my scarf on. Yeah, it only feels right to be talking about Tom Baker wearing a pretty damn good replica of his famous early years scarf. Yeah, I met Tom Baker on 2 occasions, and both of them were very memorable because of Tom, basically. First met him in, I think it was 2013, I think it was, when his autobiography, Who on Earth is Tom Baker, came out. And he was doing a signing, he was doing a nationwide signing thing, and he was appearing at Lear's, a bookshop in Cardiff, now long gone, sadly, and I trotted along to see him. I'd already bought and read the book because I couldn't wait to read it, so I'd ordered it and picked up a copy earlier and read it, and I paid the full price to get a signed version from Tom. And there was a big queue, and it was quite exciting to meet Tom. And of course, in these situations, you sort of think of something to say, not just, I'm your greatest fan, what was your favourite monster? You want to say something different, slightly different. So I went up to him, and as he was signing the book, I just said to him, I've read the book already, Tom, I really enjoyed it. Have you ever thought about writing fiction? And he looked up at me with a little glint in his eye and sort of gave a half wink and said, well, some people who've read my book think I already have. And that's one of the things about Tom Baker and his life. Once you read about his life, you sort of think, can somebody have lived a life like this? Because his life is an extraordinary story. How much of it is true in his book? Who knows? Only he knows that. And you do feel that he is a master storyteller. He's a great raconteur. He talks so eruditely about the world and his experiences of it. And I must admit, when he said that to me, it was like, yeah, that's Tom. That is very much Tom. I next met him. This would be within the last 10 years, perhaps, possibly. Time goes so quickly. Back in the days when although I still write for Starburst magazine, I used to go to London for film screenings and premieres and special events and things. And when the Horror Channel a few years ago, they started showing some classic Doctor Who serials, and they obtained the rights to many of these stories, and they did a special press launch at the Ivy in London, which was quite glamorous. Never been there before, so quite excited to go there. And it was a lovely do. They had the upstairs room, they had a buffet, they had some drinks, they had sort of Doctor Who banners and things, and Tom was there to open this thing. And he came along in the morning, and he did a little chat to the assembled hacks of the press. Must have been 20, 30 of us maybe. And we were sitting there asking Tom questions, and he was in a good mood. I mean, he was very, as he always is, he's very much commands the room. It was his audience, and he was relishing the chance to orate to his audience. He was answering the questions, and I asked him a question, which was, I think, about Elizabeth Sladen, his memories of working with Elizabeth Sladen, who had passed away maybe a year or so before, and he answered that question, and the questions kept coming, and I had another question for him. And my other question was, Doctor Who's obviously an important part of your life. What other work that you've done are you most proud of? Which I thought was a reasonable question. I only got as far as saying, Doctor Who's obviously an important part of your life, when he jumped in, well, it's obviously a big part of yours, the number of questions you're asking me, the number of questions you've asked me. I'd only asked him 2 questions. And I thought, and of course everybody laughed and thought it was very funny. Later on then, as the actual press call, if you like, disbanded, we all wandered off to have a drink and have a chat and things. And he was doing selected interviews with certain journalists. Unfortunately, I hadn't realised this was happening and I couldn't get in, hadn't pre-booked a slot with him. But he did do a little photo call later on against the Horror Channel backdrops. And I managed to elbow my way to get that done. I passed my iPad to the nearest person, and went up to him, and he put his arm around with this big grin on his face and looked at me and said, here he is, the great Inquisitor, because I'd asked him 2 questions. And I just said something like, Tom, I've always wanted to meet you and ask you questions. You can't fault me for asking 2. And he just had this big grin on his face. And there's the picture, one of the pictures that was taken of my encounter with Tom. Great moment, because people often say don't meet your heroes, and when you do meet your heroes, sometimes you'll be a disappointment if they're in a bad mood, or they're not as nice as you thought they were, or they're boring, but he was Tom. He was Tom. He was and of course I know enough about Tom over the years to know how he can be, and you've heard all those anecdotes about how he behaved on set, especially when he got bedded into the role and he felt he knew more about the character than the writers did, and so on. But he was on that day, he was just this great big benevolent bear, and it was just so nice to meet him like that, and I wouldn't have liked to have met him in one of his earlier movies. So those are my 2 experiences of meeting Tom, both very memorable experiences. I'm glad I have got to meet him. I'm glad I met him sort of in his prime, if you like, or not that I wouldn't like to meet him now, of course. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with him and he's still perfectly sharp, but I'm glad that I met him when he was still lively and active. Yeah, it's difficult. He is such a legend. He means so much to so many people. And although, as you said, I saw in my rankings, he comes number 3 in my list of rankings. That's not to do with his performance at all. It's purely to do with the tone and the way the series progressed and things in his later years. But he is an absolute legend. I mean, they don't make actors like him anymore. We don't get British actors with that eccentricity and that breadth and depth of experience that they bring to their performances. And although Doctor Who was obviously the summit of his career, you watch anything with Tom, he's made some films, he's done comedy, he's done, I suppose later in his life he was best known for doing the voiceovers on Little Britain, and he brought that rich, fruity cheekiness to that as well. And there's always something in a Tom Baker performance that's captivating and grabs your eye. And I think it is perhaps a shame that post Doctor Who his career didn't take off in the way that perhaps it has done for actors who play the role today. If you think how David Tennant and Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker have all gone on to do high-profile things, I think that comes with the territory now, whereas it didn't so much in those days. You don't hear so much about actors being typecast these days. If they're successful in something, they go on to do other things because producers and directors know that person is good box office. That wasn't necessarily the way in the 70s. And perhaps with Tom Baker, his performance as the Doctor was so big and so pervasive that you can understand that people might have been intimidated at the thought of casting him in a different role, because he was so embedded as the Doctor. And of course, he was there for 7 years, and that wouldn't necessarily have benefited him. And it possibly is why we get doctors who only stick around for 3 years these days, because they do worry that could still happen. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. Tom Baker is 90. It's fantastic. I'm so glad he's still around. He's one of the great links to the classic Doctor Who series who's still with us. I salute you, sir. Tom Baker, 90. Amazing. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, why not like and subscribe? Plenty of Doctor Who stuff on this channel. Plenty more stuff to come. If you've met Tom Baker, if you've had an encounter with the man himself, why not tell me about it? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of him. Let me know what he said to you. Was he in a good mood? Was he in a bad mood? What was he like? Let me know. Right, thank you. There is another Doctor Who video coming tomorrow, just to let you know. It's another one of those videos as a reaction to some of the nonsense that's out there at the moment. I do feel that all the anti-Doctor Who crowd, I don't understand their mentality. They persist in putting up these videos about Doctor Who. And I don't mind if people put up comments that they don't like stories, they don't like this, they don't like that. But there are a lot of people at the moment who are putting videos on YouTube which are getting lots of views, which are just lies. And they're based on falsehoods, misinterpretations of data. However, tomorrow I'm going to do a video just to put that right. And it's about how Doctor Who is being perceived by the public, how Doctor Who is being received by the public. Despite what these people will tell you, Doctor Who at the moment is on a high. Its ratings have been very good over the last month since we had the special episodes. Don't let these people tell you otherwise, and they are. And tomorrow I'm going to give you the truth. So look out for that one coming tomorrow. I will see you then. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.